Welcome everyone. This is a unique webinar. We're going to be talking about R and Python. And to give you guys a little bit of background, I've been a avid user of R for the better part of a decade now. And but I've recently started learning Python now too. And we're going to talk a lot about why I'm now learning Python and why you should possibly consider learning Python as well. This is kind of a futuristic webinar, meaning I'm taking what I'm seeing and I'm having to make kind of estimations as to where I think things are headed. So we'll talk a lot about the future and why I think things are going to unfold a certain way. We do have a ton of great information we're going to give, and then also make sure you stick around until the end because I'm going to be giving away some valuable cheat sheets and also some exclusive course offerings as well. So with that said, let's get started. Let's talk about R and Python. All right, agenda for today, just at a high level, things are changing out there. They're always changing. The software community and the data science community are evolving so rapidly. There's new tools coming out every day, and it's a constant battle to stay on top of everything. So I'm going to talk about this unique situation that's happening right now, which is where teams and R and Python are forming, where we've got different skill sets. I'll also talk about my own personal journey a little bit. I'll give you a little background on my story. I hope that's okay. And then I'll show you kind of why I'm learning Python and why you might want to as well. Talk about learning Python, and we'll actually go through a strengths assessment. So I'm going to show you what I saw in Python just at a high level, talk about the ecosystem a little bit, and we'll show you kind of some of the strengths and weaknesses of each. And then we will talk about the big thing, which is our business science is growing. We're now adding more Python data science to our curriculum. So we're going to talk about both the new Python track, and that's what we're mainly going to be focusing on, but we're also going to talk about things like learning labs and some of these other kind of features and benefits of business science, and we'll show how Python's going to fit in there as well. Talk a little bit about our new course, which is the big announcement over the past week and a half. We're in the second week of course launch, and we already have over 200 students in our new course. Very exciting. Also very kind of crazy because I didn't know that we were going to have so much success so quickly with it. And then at the end, we're going to give you guys the exclusive gifts and offers. So stick around for that. All right. So let's talk about growth. Business science is growing. Things are changing. We have to adapt at business science to be able to meet the ever-changing demands that we're seeing from industry. That's what it boils down to. So what am I seeing in industry? Well, I'm seeing the emergence of Python and R now working together. There's new tools that are out there, things like Reticulate, things like R2Py or RPy2, and these new technologies that are now bringing these previously kind of separate groups together. So it's giving us the opportunity to work more closely with teams, whether or not you're from an R background or a Python background. It's also giving companies an opportunity to leverage more tools than what they previously had. So for example, if you were just using Python previously, there may be tools in R in the R ecosystem that you can now leverage, and vice versa. So what we have seen here up until probably around the 2000, it still exists a little bit, but you have these kind of two camps where R and Python people, they used to kind of battle, and it used to be kind of a competition. And now what we're seeing is this change is finally happening, where the tooling is catching up, and we're now able to use some of these languages together to deliver results. So the idea here is really, there's no reason in bickering between R and Python. Both have their own strengths and weaknesses, but really what organizations care about is results. And I think if we focus on those now, and we can figure out how to develop solutions where we use one or the other, or even both together. So these are the changes that are happening, and I'm excited to talk about these today. So just to give you a little bit more background about what I'm seeing. So I talk with a lot of companies. They reach out to business science because they're either, they have their own challenges in their data science. They're trying to build out data science groups. And I often talk a lot about what they're going through. And I've kind of seen this idea where we're now starting to move away from the, hey, I'm a Python shop, or hey, I'm an R shop, to, hey, I'm part of the data science group. We have a team of 5 people. 2 of them are R people, 3 are Python people, and this is what we're trying to accomplish. And the reason that we're seeing this unfold this way, I've been talking with these companies, and they're basically describing, they have kind of these unique positions, right, where they've got people in certain spots and they help out in different areas. And you also have people that are using tools even outside of R and Python. So like Tableau, Power BI, there's a handful of BI dashboarding tools, and all sorts of other things like on the data engineering side. So it ends up being a team composition. Teams win. And in order to get results out of your teams, you don't want to have all of the same people on your team, but rather what you want to have is different skills by position, right? So if you have, say, somebody who's really good at research, that person might be predominantly an R user, or because they're developing, maybe R Markdown reports a lot. We'll talk about R Markdown if that's not a familiar technology for you. And then you might have machine learning researchers, people who are utilizing like automations, machine learning to drive results very quickly. That might be a Python person. So you've got kind of this graphic here, which is unfolding, where you've got different tools and then different kind of spots where they can, they're better or worse suited. And then you have the people who know these skills. And those players have different skills, and you want to have different players on your team in different positions in order to be able to get the best possible results. So that's the idea here. You don't want to have all one type of person, but you want to have people that are good at different things, and you want to bring those people together. They have different ideas, and they generally get better results. So with that said, I'm going to talk a little bit now about my journey and kind of how I came to be where I'm at right now. And I believe this will give you a little bit more context about why I'm learning Python is really the end goal here. So my journey, I began learning R probably 7, 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago now. So the better part of a decade ago. And I actually came from Excel. So I was really, in Excel every day doing business analysis. I worked at a major industrial products manufacturer. I dealt with a lot of customer data. I dealt with a lot of product data. I dealt with a lot of, trying to figure out, which customers or which products demand was going to be up or down, and trying to figure out and make sense of it all. So at that last company, I was, my career was progressing very well. I eventually got to a position where I needed to know analytics much deeper. And I started to do more and more analytics, primarily in Excel. And eventually, because I was working with customer data and transactions and, all sorts of databases, trying to pull all that into Excel, my computer ended up pretty much crashing every single day and it was a nightmare for a good couple of months. So I needed to figure out a better way. And it turned out for me, R was that solution. It was at that point in time, the most complete tool chain for making business reports. So I was using tools like dplyr, ggplot2, and R Markdown. Don't worry if you don't know what those mean, because I'm going to explain them right now. So what I was actually doing with those tools was following a workflow that looks something like this, where I was connecting up to a database. Previously, I was doing this with Excel, where I would do some sort of data manipulations, summarizations, report on different results, understand, which customers were purchasing more or less frequently than in the past, and make these nice visualizations. And then I put those into a report for my boss, who was very interested in understanding what information I was seeing and just kind of getting the results from my analysis as quickly as possible so we could make decisions. this was the entire workflow. If I, the better I was at this workflow, the better I was going to do at my job, and the more prospect of my career advancing. So the problem is this ended up breaking right here when I was using Excel. It turned out that dplyr and ggplot2 can slice and dice, and I wasn't, by today's standards, I really wasn't working with that big of data, but back then in 2003 or 4, it was a lot of data. It was like millions of rows and, like maybe 75 to 100 columns. So for Excel, it just wasn't working out so well. R worked fantastically. For business analysis, it was excellent. It did the trick. In fact, I love it so much, I created a whole company around it, right? It's just an awesome thing to be able to produce these business results and be able to help students advance their career now, using the same type of techniques and analysis techniques that I was using. Also, I found out after I started learning R that it had this really unique capability called Shiny, which is for making these interactive web applications. And that now is one of the things that I was most excited about, because I started to get eventually, after I started working at that company, I got into consulting a little bit, and Shiny was huge for that. So I was actually able to make a living by building these web applications, and companies were really appreciating it. But to add to kind of where my journey takes a little bit of a turn. So I've also been, through my own growth and through my own interests, I've been developing a lot of open source software for the data science community. And this has been over years and years. I think I released my first R package, which was TidyQuant, back in 2016. And since then, I've built many more. This is just 3 of the most popular. And these software programs have been heavily used by the community. It's one of the ways that I really enjoy giving back to the community, is developing software around my own hobbies and interests. This one's a financial package. These 2 are time series. These 2 are being developed the most right now currently. And I've actually just released back in November of last year, the first course on Modeltime, which is for forecasting. But to make a long story short, this project that I've been focusing on, which is Modeltime most frequently lately for these time series analysis, this software has been, it's the most advanced software out there for forecasting, because we have now pretty much everything that we can possibly integrate, all the newest technology like machine learning, ensembling, deep learning, and H2O, automated machine learning, backtesting. We've been able to develop this system. But you might not know that not all of the system is based in R. So I'm going to focus specifically on this package here, this Modeltime Gluon package. And I'll talk about that more specifically, because this, I think, highlights what I found out here back when I was developing it last year, in that when you just focus on one language, you end up losing something, because another language may have a tool that exists that works better. And if you only know one language, then you're one-dimensional. So the problem is that deep learning, Python, there's no way to say it. Python is light years ahead of R in deep learning. There is this package that I know very well. It's called GluonTS. I've actually built Modeltime GluonTS, which is the integration that I'm going to focus on here. And this specific tool is something that I wanted to utilize, but it was written in Python. And for me, that was kind of, initially that was kind of a little bit of a hit, because I'm trying to develop this amazing forecasting system, but some of the most amazing and powerful tools are in deep learning for time series, and I wasn't able to use them. So, I took a little bit of time. I learned the GluonTS package, and then I came up with a solution, seeing some of the stuff that the folks at our studio were building. They built this tool called Reticulate. And what it really allowed me to do was to do kind of this combination where I'm not just using R, but I'm also leveraging Python this other library that was written in Python together with R, and I'm able to combine the two and develop software that produces the results that I wanted. So I'm able to actually run with this Modeltime GluonTS, the deep learning, the deep AR algorithm that I wanted to get out of this GluonTS package. I'm actually able to reproduce it in R. And there's another package too in Python called RPy2, which is kind of the opposite, where if you want to leverage R in Python, you now have that capability. So that was a profound kind of epiphany for me. I was super excited when I figured out, okay, this is something that we can actually build software together on. It doesn't need to be, oh, I'm only a one-trick pony in R. I can't leverage Python now. So I'm now able to combine solutions. This particular solution combines the power of GluonTS with the ease of use of Modeltime, and it really made a unique solution that showed me and opened my eyes to the world of Python. So what I came to find out is that this isn't an isolated incident. This idea of combining both Python and R together to gain results, I think, is going to become bigger and bigger and bigger, because these two ecosystems have, there's never going to be one ecosystem that contains just everything, because it takes too much time to build software in both languages. So, for example, me in Modeltime, it took me over a year to build that ecosystem out. Imagine me stopping everything I'm doing and just working on a Python version of that. But we don't have to, because there's these tools like RPy2 and Reticulate that we can leverage both of these systems. So this is an interesting idea. We're going to explore that more. But first, what I want to do is kind of take a step back and take another look at this. So when I was talking about that team composition now, it really becomes the same kind of situation that I was running into, where I saw something over in Python that I needed, and I was able to leverage both Python and R together to get those results. I think that that's going to become more and more, because you're going to see that these teams are going to have R people, they're going to have Python people, and to be able to work together, we just need to figure out how to connect the dots. And it's often a lot easier than having to rewrite software completely into one language or another. So very cool. We can now leverage these team compositions more effectively. It doesn't need to be an R shop. It doesn't need to be a Python shop. So me and my own specific journey, I began learning Python about 12 months ago. I dabbled in Python before, so don't get me wrong. I don't want you to think that I'm a super, bare bones beginner in Python, but I will say this. I was never really focused on it until about 12 months ago. But once I got the idea here for where I could take and the potential of learning Python with R, I got really excited. So the first thing I did, though, was I did a strength assessment. So I'm a big fan of research, experimenting, trying things out, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. And my ultimate goal is to be as productive as possible, both at what I do at business science, also teaching, also making sure that my students are going to be super productive when they get out there into the real world and have to apply data science to business. So what I found is that the strengths of R, and this is what I've known for a long time, business analysis, it's really the R programming language was developed around statistics. So what do people have to do in statistics? They have to make a lot of reports. They have to make a lot of analyses. They have to be able to come through analyses quickly. And that's what the R ecosystem is designed for. I mean, and it's built out from there. They're now expanding into machine learning. Tidy models is amazing. We're doing a lot of time series with Tidy models and Modeltime right now. And then reporting, R Markdown is just fantastic. And then Shiny apps. It's still no quicker. I don't think there's a better way to build applications. I know, Python has Dash and Streamlit right now, but if you want to build like a customized web application, the Shiny ecosystem has been around for 6-7 years now, and it just has so much available at your fingertips to be able to develop with. Conversely, when I started looking at Python, I got really excited because I saw how easy it was to build software in Python. And this is something that initially I wasn't as concerned about when I was first making that choice between R and Python. But as I've kind of grown and started to use R a lot more and become a software developer myself, it's becoming super important to be able to leverage the ability to build good software that's going to last a long time, and you're not going to have to worry about it failing. Python is really good for that. And it's got a whole ecosystem that's been developing around it and in the data science space too. So we've got a lot of tooling around automation. We have a lot of tooling around machine learning, and specifically automated machine learning as well. And then cloud, that's one of the big strengths of Python. So let's explore these just a little bit more. Here's an example of a package that is in Python. It's called Prefect. And if you've never heard of it before, this is a really cool library that allows for basically pipelining and automating the workload of manipulating data, running reports, doing all sorts of different things on an automated scale at an automated schedule. So this is a really cool tool, and it just doesn't exist in R. We don't have this type of tool where it makes it super easy to do kind of these workflow automations. R has the targets package, which, don't get me wrong, is amazing. I love it. I'm actually developing a Modeltime extension to targets right now, but the R ecosystem is just not quite there with the automations compared to the Python ecosystem. There's just so much available. So this is an example of a tool that exists in Python where we may want to be able to leverage with R, or we may want to just build out a workflow in Python. And this is something that's unique to Python that we just don't have in R. So another example. This is from a fellow LinkedIn celebrity. So the PyCarrot package, Mo's, I can't think of his last name right now, but he's very active on LinkedIn, and this is his library. I've been playing around with it. It's really cool. It's really good. He makes it just super easy. It's a low-code way to do machine learning in Python. It's very well done. Handles all sorts of stuff that traditionally we have to do a little bit more manual processing to. A lot of feature engineering, a lot of pre-processing, and then just being able to apply a bunch of models very quickly. Very well done. This is another example of where Python, in my mind, is exploding right now on the machine learning end, on these automated tools. There's also Teapot. There's several other tools, H2O AutoML, which is also available in R, and many others. So Python has some clear strengths. One other one is cloud integration. So the Bodo 3 package, being able to connect up to AWS, being able to connect up to Azure, being able to connect up to GCP, just is super easy with Python. Some of that tooling is now being developed in R, but it's just not quite there yet, in my opinion, compared to what exists in Python. So we got a lot of cool stuff that's going on in Python on the automation, the machine learning end, and the cloud. So that's the good news with Python. What about the bad news? Well, it's 2021, and the reality is setting in for me. It's still really difficult to make a good visualization in Python. So fortunately, I found out about the Python plot9 package, which is a port of ggplot2. But I'll be honest, if you want to make a good report with the first thing is you need to have visualizations, and there's no better tool out there than ggplot2. And it's such a critical task for business analysts to be able to persuade people to make convincing arguments. You need to be able to visualize, and Python, unfortunately, in my opinion, is just not there yet. So business analysis, R gets the win there. Reporting, again, it's 2021, and it's still really difficult to make a good report with Jupyter. If you don't believe me, try it. Try to make a PDF report out of a Jupyter notebook. It looks like garbage. There's no other way to say it. I hate to be negative on it, but R Markdown is light years ahead of Jupyter. And this is, pretty much I believe a function of where R comes from, which with the statistics, the statistical analysis. They've had to build papers and reports for many, many years, whereas Jupyter has more focused on kind of the shareability aspect and being able to share code with Python people. Makes that very seamless to share code and text, but it doesn't make it very seamless to build a report that an executive is going to receive and make a decision from. So R gets the win on the reporting end, and then on the Shiny apps end, in my opinion, I still think that Shiny is better than some of the ecosystems that are coming up in Python. I hope to see that it continues to advance in Python, but things like Dash, Plotly's Dash, and Streamlit, they just don't have the ecosystem around them quite yet that Shiny has. And that's just a function that Shiny's been around for many, many years. So people have built on top of Shiny, making things a lot easier to do. So lots of stuff going on in R, lots of stuff going on in Python. You can see that these strengths are actually good things because, with the ability to use both of these, it becomes a lot less of a burden to say, oh, hey, I need to stop what I'm doing and, completely learn R or completely learn Python. No, we can start to kind of mix and match. So the conclusion here is that no system will ever be completely perfect. So my solution has been, for me specifically, to learn both. And I've done this because I've noticed that as both systems evolve, they're getting a lot more tooling and a lot more power. So let me talk a little bit about now the business science roadmap. So we've been talking for about 30 minutes on kind of what's going on out there. I'm just going to take a short 10 to 15 minutes and talk about what I'm doing at BSU to help students, data scientists stay ahead of the curve and to continue to progress in their careers. So I realized that only knowing R, I became one-dimensional. I thought a lot about it. I kind of sat down, and after I built this Modeltime GluonTS package, I said, hey, at business science, we really need to develop a curriculum around Python. It's definitely with these tools being not only kind of diverging, but also these strengths forming and being able to connect the two at the end. That's really important. So I decided I was going to build a Python track several months back, probably about started working harder on it about 6-7 months ago. And finally, I'm happy to say just this past week, I released my first Python course. So that's this first one right here. This is the roadmap that I'm showing you. And what I'm trying to strive for is to have a vision of kind of where I want this program to go based on their strengths. So eventually pulling both together in a course that teaches you how to do some of the things that I was doing with that GluonTS package and doing the same thing on the opposite end with the Python system. So I wanted to focus on kind of building a track that did Python justice and helps students that are either coming from R to Python or fresh into Python. I want to help them get off on the right foot as quickly as possible. So in coming up with this new program, there was a lot of decisions to be made, and I got a lot of questions. Actually, I reached out to my students, and they were super helpful. So one of the first decisions I had to make is which IDE to use. And what it came down to, so for the R course, there was a lot of students that actually said, hey, why don't you just use RStudio for the Python materials? And the reason is because RStudio now supports Python, and it's really good for statistical analysis. And I was like this close to picking RStudio as the IDE, but what I found is that my philosophy for the Python course is leveraging strengths, and I wouldn't be doing the Python course justice by picking RStudio, which is better for statistical analysis. What I needed to do was pick the best IDE for Python development that's currently available. And to me, that was Visual Studio Code. So what I want to do is actually just show you what VS Code looks like. If you've never seen VS Code, so this is kind of what it looks like. If you have if you have a directory, you normally start out here. And this is what's called an IDE. It's an integrated development environment, and it allows us to develop Python code or code in many other different languages like C++ or whatever. It starts out as a bare bones IDE, but what is really cool is it has this extension marketplace. And this is an ecosystem of extension packages, and you can just type in anything. Like if you type in Azure, all of these extensions come up, and it just allows you to just very quickly do the things that you need to do. And it just makes life a little bit easier for developing code. So I'm just going to go through a couple of the extensions that I have open right now. So like, for example, one for software development. And again, this is one of the focuses on this Python track that I'm developing. I want it to be focused on software development. So Docker is going to play a role. And given that Docker is going to play a role, VS Code has a Docker extension. So I'm able to see all the Docker containers here. I'm able to actually see the images that I've built here previously. And I'm able to connect up to these as needed. On the flip side, there's cloud. It has an AWS extension, so I can connect up to various cloud formations if I needed to or whatnot. It has Git enabled, which is another kind of really key piece. RStudio also has that, but it's not. It's just being able to have all of this stuff right at our fingertips is really important. And one of the reasons that I decided to select VS Code. There's a lot more benefits and some of them I'll get into. RStudio, though, is still the best, in my opinion, for statistical analysis. So if you are just primarily going to be doing statistics, I would suggest that VS Code's probably not the one that you want to focus on, but rather the RStudio IDE. Okay, cool. So that was the first decision, made that one, VS Code. Next thing, what to focus on. So this is where the Python ecosystem, and I actually spent a lot of time researching what packages are available out there that really stuck out and people are using a lot. So I developed this cheat sheet here, and I'm actually going to give this away. This is one of the gifts, the free gifts that I'm going to give everyone today. I developed this primarily for the new course, the 101 course. And the first page is basically like how to kind of do your normal data science stuff, like importing data, connecting up to databases. You've got your IDEs here, and then you've got Tidy, which is using pandas. You've got the pandas documentation links right here for time series, text, categorical, and so on. Visualization, some of the key packages, modeling, some of the key packages, and then communication, some of the key packages as well. But really what I did was I also focused on the second page, which to me is what separates Python from R. And what I'm trying to do is really play to Python's strengths. And what I saw is, this section here in the middle with like ML ops with ML flow, cloud with Bodo 3 and some of the other packages in here, ETL automations. These are some of the things that really set Python apart. Also on the machine learning end, there's just a lot of development going on and a lot of activity there. So it was an eye-opening experience, something that was really cool. And I definitely want to give you guys this as a free gift because I think it'll be of value to you now that I put in the work to analyze the ecosystem. So I checked it out. I wanted to decide what to focus on. So I came up with a plan next. And this is the plan. So this is the top half of the Python track that I'm developing. And what we're focusing here on is automation, machine learning, and cloud. Those are the three philosophical points that I needed to focus on because those are the strengths of the strengths assessment. So I'm coming up with now this Python machine learning. We're going to come up with a track now. And what I first started working on was the 101 with the end goal of being getting through machine learning, doing some model deployment, API work, and then eventually bringing it in together with R to leverage reticulated and RPy2 and show you how to do some of the stuff that I was doing, like with the Modeltime GluonTS package. So you can do that yourself. So that's the goal. What I'm now going to spend a little bit of time on is this first course here. And this is really, it's a super exciting thing for me. I feel like when business science first began, that excited. It's like starting something completely new, and with Python, being able to highlight some of its strengths and some of the really fascinating things about it. So we'll talk a little bit about this course. What it's focused on is automation, and not the prefect sense where it has kind of like this automated solution for data engineering, but more for how to build a software library that you can then just run with one or two lines of code, and it just runs on an automated frequency. So that's what we're focused on in this first course. And it's really cool because it takes an actual business problem, which is this forecast problem that management has come to us. And what they've done is they've provided us some data, and what our job is to do is to make this kind of automated reporting system. So that's what we're doing with Python. We're going to leverage several packages like Pandas, skTime, Papermill. We're going to work with databases like SQLite. And really, this is a beginner course, and it's designed for somebody with no experience with Python before, to be able to get up and running and to be able to, more than that, learn in depth the things that I know that they're going to need to learn, which are things like Pandas and NumPy, visualization. Between these two bullet points, there's 10 hours of video on, and then SQL databases, connecting up reading and writing to databases. So you're building forecasts and you're writing those forecasts to the database so they can be retrieved by anyone in the organization. Introductions to skTime for forecasting in Python, reporting using Jupyter and NB-convert, building libraries. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second, and automation. So the automation, the whole idea here is that Python is really good at these kind of building of software, and those softwares is able to be automated. So let's just take another look real quick at VSCode. And one of the key strengths for me, and this is something that I don't think most data science courses are really teaching, are the ability to build Python libraries. And that's kind of what this whole course workflow. So in VSCode, the course is structured as this, where we take some raw data, put it into a database and kind of run through it. And we're building all of these functions here. So if you can see this, collect data is a function. So if I go to my database, and if I go, I'll put this over here. So if I go to my database, this is my collect data function. So you're learning how to build all these functions. And the idea is that if you go to your workflow, just right here, this is my workflow over here. And I built these functions, and I'm able to just import them very, very cleanly from my Pandas extensions, collect data, summarize by time, ARIMA forecast. And then what it does is it turns my workflow into just a few lines of code. This function here, collect data, collects data from my SQL database, connects up and pulls the raw data in, cleans it up. Then we have summarize by time. This takes that raw data, aggregates it to a monthly frequency by category 2. Then we run our ARIMA forecast, and it loops through all of the different time series, and it produces the ARIMA forecast, and then plotting the forecast. And you can see here, this is what's built. This is the plot here that is generated in those essentially 4 functions. And you can see to go from raw data to this in 4 functions, that is a really powerful skill that if you develop that, it doesn't just apply to forecasting, but it applies to any business problem. How to break down a business process into collecting data, cleaning that data, preparing it, doing some analysis, and then visualization. That is something that you will learn how to do in this course. And that's one of the key benefits, I think, of Python in a nutshell, is being able to do that very simply, being able to build a library of data science skills. So data wrangling, visualization is very important. You learn that a lot. These are the 4 steps, the 1, 2, 3, 4. It produces the plot. So you're building software that simplifies a business process, breaking it down into the most minute steps and taking away a lot of the code, so you can just focus on the key inputs here and then adjust those key inputs as you automate. So when you develop that reporting automation, you're then just toggling and tweaking certain parameters, and then it's producing multiple reports for you based on the parameters that you're selecting. So that is the first course. If that excites you, I do have a special offer for it, but I'm going to wait until the end. So I want to talk about a little bit about what's next. So where are we headed next? Well, what we need to be thinking about, again, are the strengths. So this is the philosophy of where we're headed is going to be driven by the strengths of Python, and those are going to be in machine learning and cloud. So this isn't set in stone. I threw a few in here that I'm exploring right now, but we'll probably add more packages and libraries as well. I know students have been asking about things like feature tools, things like PyCaret, things like Teapot, and some of these other. So I have to kind of pick and choose. I can't teach everything, but I also have a solution to that as well. And then on the deployment end, we're going to be working with APIs, and we're also going to be working with cloud services. So that's going to be taught as well. And then the ultimate goal, so actually we'll talk real quickly about some of the technologies. So these are some of the ones that I'm investigating right now: Dask for parallel processing, PyCaret, Prefect for automations, Fast API for APIs, MLflow for the machine learning lifecycle, and MLOps, and then cloud, AWS, and probably some Azure and Google Cloud Platform as well. So those are the are some of the kind of directions that I'm going in right now, and that's nothing set in stone by any means, but those are strong candidates. And then at the end of it, we need something that pulls everything together. So that is going to be the R Python Teams course, the Reticulate and RPy2, learning how to basically build software packages now, like R packages or Python packages that leverage the R programming language and Python programming language. So being able to pull the opposite. So if you're programming in Python, being able to pull R into a package and being able to deliver a solution, and vice versa. That's what we're going to be focusing on with that last course. So it's pretty, it's definitely a lot to take in, and it'll take a little bit to build it all. But Rome wasn't built in a day, and as long as we start working forward and moving forward in the right direction, I'm pretty excited about it, and I think it can happen pretty quickly. So we'll be having a lot more exciting conversations like this here over the next several months. All right, so let's recap the BSU roadmap. This is what it looks like right now. So we were focusing primarily on the Python side, but also there's 5 courses on the R side. So for those of you who are brand new to business science, this is what I've spent the past 3 years building. The data science with R track, the web track. So we've got the 101 R, which is kind of like the prerequisite for all of the R courses. And then there's the data science for business, which is focused on like business consulting and machine learning. And then this one is the high performance time series analysis with Modeltime. And then we've got the 2 Shiny courses as well. So we're going to feed those into this course. And the main prerequisites for this final course are going to be the 101 of both. So I'm going to try and not have any dependencies for any real heavy duty machine learning in this final course, in case you haven't taken these all the courses. And then this 101 Python is going to be the prerequisite for the next machine learning course, which is what I'm going to start working on as soon as I wrap this thing up. And then it'll be the deployment, and then the final piece will be the Reticulate and RPy2. So that's the general game plan. And then so we see that and we're saying, okay, Matt has to make decisions about different technologies and what he's going to teach. And that's true. I do have to do that for the R and the Python tracks. I can't teach everything in them, but that's okay because the R and Python goes into so much depth on all the different topics that you learn those and become experts. So when you want to learn new technologies, I now have a new resource for that as well. And this is actually the same resource that I've been utilizing for R, but now for Python. For specific topics that aren't going to be covered in the full Python track, I'll be able to tackle those with Learning Labs Pro. So I'm very excited about this. I think this will make an interesting dynamic because I'm going to start doing, what I'm going to try and do is do offsetting weeks. So I do 2 Learning Labs per month. And these are just 1-hour sessions where I talk at length about and usually work through a code analysis. And I'm planning to do now 1 on Python and 1 on R, and I'm going to try and split it up. So I think it'll be really exciting. It'll be a way for me to kind of talk about different sides of analyses. Like I could, focus on marketing for a series and have several on Python and several on R. So it ends up showing people kind of both sides of the coin. And I think it'll really help out people who want to learn both R and Python as well. So we're going to be doing those 2 times per month. I will have a link to that here that I'll share in a minute. Okay, so let's talk about real quick special gifts and offers before I let y'all go and we move on to question and answering. First thing, free gifts. So I have 2 cheat sheets I'm going to be giving you guys all tomorrow. I also have recorded this. And we're going to be putting this on YouTube, and I'll send out the recording tomorrow as well for all of the registrants. So you guys are going to get both the Ultimate Python and the Ultimate R cheat sheet, and yeah, we'll definitely get those to you tomorrow. The next thing, the system. So if you're interested in learning more about the system, and if you're interested in learning either R or Python now, we have solutions now for you. So the newest course, the one that's launched this past week, we are giving 20% off this course. This is our new Python course. I'm going to put that in the link right now. This is our Python for data science and for data science automation course. That was just launched here a week ago. I only launch a course probably once every 6 months or so. So it was a big deal. And we already have 210, 215 people in it. Definitely take advantage. There's 20% off today. The next course I'm going to be working on is the machine learning, the R track. If you guys are interested in learning R and any of those tools like forecasting, machine learning, automated machine learning, learning the tidyverse, tidy models, all of those in an integrated system, then that is for you. Check that out. This is 20% off through the end of the week. And so those are the 2 links there. Let me just get back here. So this is the 5-course R track. So you can see you get the 5 different courses, and it teaches you pretty much everything to do data science for your company. Our students have been taking this. They have had excellent results and getting lots of promotions, hearing lots of success stories. The 101 course, just to recap what you learn, it's designed for beginners, pandas, NumPy, visualization, SQL databases, intro to SK time, reporting, building libraries, automation, and you do this through an entire project that lasts about 10 modules. So it's about 30 hours worth of video content, and it's unique because you complete an entire end-to-end project. I don't know any other course like that. 5-course R track, we just talked about that. It's amazing. We've got thousands of students in it, and it's getting them exceptional results. The last one, Learning Labs Pro, we're also giving 20% off of that. So if you're interested in getting the shorter lessons once every 2 weeks, check that out. I'm giving everyone 20% off right now as well through the end of the week. Just use that link that I just put into the chat. Okay, so that is what I had to talk about today. Now I'm interested in hearing what you guys have to say and going through some question and answer. So I see there's a lot of questions in here, and I'll just go kind of down through them one by one. So John has asked, will the PowerPoint deck be made available? I can make it available. Yes, that is no problem. Jonathan asks, do you see the case for using Dash Plotly, which does Python and R, as opposed to Shiny for web deployments? Well, here's the other thing too. Shiny also does Python because of Reticulate, right? So you can actually, I built apps with Python in them using Reticulate, and it works really well. So you can do either or. It really doesn't matter if you want to use Dash or Shiny. I think Shiny is a little bit more, the ecosystem's bigger and it's easier to stand up an app quickly that looks really professional. But Dash is also good. And I think that Dash will grow as the ecosystem around it grows. I think it's still a little bit, a little young, but it'll get there. And I want to do more with Dash as well. I've done a few trainings with Dash before, but I still need to get back into it and check it out. Kadir asks, how long will Python continue in the business science market? Will Julia take over Python, or Python only will lead business science market for a long time? So this is a really good question. And this is one of the ones, I wanted to actually integrate talking a little bit about Julia into the presentation. I just didn't want the presentation to be too long. But Julia is something I have my eye on right now, because if you haven't heard of Julia, it's a language that is built based off of, I believe, Java, but it's really, really fast, and it's just good for high performance computing and good for a lot of different things that are very memory or very time, very expensive processes. So things like Bayesian analysis, where you're doing, your MCMCs, your Markov chain Monte Carlo, which is a very expensive algorithm. It sounds like Julia may take over that at sometime soon. But I think it's going to be a niche player, though. I don't think it's going to be quite as mainstream as Python yet. So I think Python will be pretty popular. Also, R is very popular, probably more so than Julia, I would guesstimate. And but I do see Julia starting to pick up some steam behind it. Okay, so let's see. Richa asked, "Dear Matt, can I get help from you analyzing and programming my remote sensing data?" Well, so what I would say is how I can help is through the courses. I can help you by as you take the courses. I can give you kind of help through working through issues and those sorts of things. And then also all the students who sign up for courses gain access to our Slack channel, which is a great opportunity to network and ask those types of questions to the community. Do you recommend taking a standard statistics course? I think taking a stats course, while it's a good thing, I think people can get bogged down. I think especially like the 101 courses at Business Science, we teach you pretty much everything you need to know as we go through. So we explain certain concepts like what histogram is, what the average and standard deviation is, what a box plot is. So I don't think you necessarily need to take 3 months and learn statistics. Like I think that's that'll slow you down. But I think just having a basic understanding of certain statistics that we use frequently, like sums, means, median, standard deviation, quantile, those sorts of things is a good thing. Gutham asks, in R automation, cron R, MLflow, machine learning, H2O are sparkling tidy models, or so how we can say R is not strength on these. Okay, so I'm not saying that R doesn't have a strength in machine learning. I'm just saying that Python has a clear strength, and that's where they're developing a lot. They're focusing a lot on machine learning right now. I use tidy models all the time. I use H2O, so definitely R has a strength there too. It used to have a weakness there, but it's now becoming more of a strength, and it's getting up to par. So I agree with you, and I think learning H2O and tidy models is an awesome choice. Gustavo asks, will the slides be available in the recording? Yes, all registrants will get those. When we talk about cloud with Python, is the cloud used just to store the data sets or to run the Python program as well on some virtual machine? So you can use it for both. Normally what I mean is running the program on a virtual machine that is accessible and usually has like an API component or some sort of component out there where you're running some software on a machine. Okay, Monica asks, is PyCaret better / easier than tidy models? So I would say tidy models is a little bit different philosophy. I don't think one is better than the other. Depends what your objective is. PyCaret is meant to be a low code solution. So what it does is it runs a lot of machine learning models on your data. Tidy models is more meant to give you the ability to build to basically run specific algorithms, and gives you a toolkit to do those, and you get to mix and match the components. So I like tidy models a lot. I built Modeltime off of it. I think that in R, it's the premier solution. I think PyCaret's also really gaining a lot of popularity on the Python end, and I'm excited to honestly play around with it more and teach it. So I'm looking forward to that. Matt, have you ever looked at the R Plumber package? This comes from, I know Richard. So this is Richard Vanderpool. So he asked if I've ever looked at the R Plumber package. Yes, I have. I actually have 2 learning labs on R Plumber. R Plumber's package is a great way to stand up APIs. It makes it super simple to create an API using it's almost like decorating functions. It's really, really powerful, and I like it a lot. So yes, Richard, I have looked into it, and I actually have 2 resources on it in Learning Labs Pro. Kadir asks, PyCharm should be used or VS Code for projects and real-time work. I looked at PyCharm. PyCharm's pretty heavy though, and it's doesn't have the ecosystem that VS Code has, and I just think VS Code, in my opinion, seems to be maybe growing in popularity a little more for good reason, because the extension marketplace is is becoming so well developed. So I like VS Code a little bit more than I do PyCharm, but that's just me. Again, I'm not an expert. I haven't coded for years in PyCharm, and you may like PyCharm, and you can actually do all the coursework in PyCharm if you'd like. Pito asks, will remaining Python modules be available by end of year? Definitely the next course. The next course will be probably fall timeframe. And then I'll try and do my best to get the 3rd Python module out, hopefully by Q1 of next year at the latest. Jonathan asks, can you comment on the strengths of VS Code versus Jupyter Lab? I can. So Jupyter Lab is good. And actually in the course, what we do is we run Jupyter Lab, and I can show you actually how we do that. So this is my VS Code. And in the course, what we do is we actually have several challenges. So like this is an example where we have a challenge and a challenge solution. Let me do this one. So this is my SK time, the ETS challenge. So this is Jupyter. It's actually running, this is the integration with VS Code. So this is actually a Jupyter file, and you can run this, but I can actually also run it if I do a terminal. And this is what I show in the course, how to run Jupyter Lab from the terminal. So if I just do Jupyter Lab, what this does is it spins up a server for me. And here I've got my Jupyter Lab running, and I'll be able to pull open now my challenge too. So in the course, I teach you how to do this, and you can pull it open. The problem with Jupyter, in my opinion, is it makes it a little bit more challenging to develop software with it. So it doesn't have all of the tools. So like VS Code, for example, has all this ecosystem. If I type in like doc strings, for example, One of the, it's got this Python doc string that just like automatically generates doc strings. And this is just such a simple add-on, but it saves so much time for building Python functions, which we build probably 10 to 15 functions in this course. So doing this 10 to 15 times for one project, is really nice to have this. This is the type of advantage that VS Code has, and it makes it super simple to build out software packages. Okay, let's see. All right, so that was Jonathan. We talked about Jupyter Lab. Now, Siddharth, is VS Code good for web scraping? Does it integrate Scrappy, Beautiful Soup? Yeah, and anything in Python, it'll be fine for. So web scraping, yes, it'll be fine. Ricardo asks, what is your opinion comparing R tidy models with Python's scikit-learn? I think R tidy models is just a little bit easier to use. The scikit-learn, I think tidy models is a little bit more flexible too, to be honest. It's newer, so they've gotten a chance to learn from kind of what Python did, and they've developed their own philosophies. And I really like the tidy model system. I can't say how big of a fan I am of it. I mean, I built Modeltime using that system for a reason. Python scikit-learn, I think it's good. I think there's, and I'll be probably teaching that in the machine learning course, but then I'll also be teaching probably some other solutions as well. The nice thing about scikit-learn though is once you learn that, I know like the XGBoost has integration with scikit-learn, and I know Dask as well for high performance computing has integration with scikit-learn. So once you learn that system, it becomes very easy to kind of expand it into some more high performance situations. Okay, Dear Raj asks, hi Matt, currently the firm I work with uses SAS, and the people who review my work usually look at the log generated by SAS. Is there a way to get good logs for Python or R as well? So I'm not 100% sure what the logs are from the SAS code, but there is logging in Python from the logging library. And then in R, there's also packages that you can make for logging as well. And also if you want complete like reproducibility, the targets package in R, I just did a learning lab on it. It's amazing. Actually, I did 2 learning labs on it. Great for logging things. So I'm sure you can add that capability. Trust me, anything in SAS you can do in SAS, you can also do in R or Python, I'm sure. Armando asks, what about something like Bokeh for Python dashboards? Bokeh is an interactive library. I think it's great. You can't put it in a PDF report though. So ggplot2 is still the gold standard. Matplotlib is probably what the comparable is, but there's Seaborn as well and Plot9 in Python. But Bokeh is good for dashboards and other kind of tools. Like if you built like a Plotly dash, you would probably use Plotly's library in it, but you could probably use Bokeh as well. So yeah, a lot of stuff you can do there, and it's a good library. Can the IDE integrate SQL? Yes, yeah, we actually do that in the course. There's a SQLite database. So if I open up my command palette here and do SQLite, so SQL, yes, there's lots of, I might not have the extension that I'm looking for on this computer, SQLite. So yes, you can just install these, install, there we go. And now if I do SQLite, SQLite, there we go. We can open a database, but it has like these extensions here. So the database I'm going to open up is this one, and what it'll do is it adds the SQLite Explorer, and then I can explore the database and pull in, different. I can show tables, and do all sorts of fun stuff like that. So there's a lot of capability with databases in VS Code. Okay, so let's see here. JP asks, any thoughts on Azure R packages? I haven't really explored it quite yet. I honestly don't use Azure a whole lot. I use AWS at Business Science. But what I can say is that R is starting to get a lot better, and I'm excited that Azure is Microsoft is putting another focus on R development. Armando asked, do you cover securing environments? So in terms of securing, we mainly focus on making the environments reproducible, meaning we have the software control usually through like Docker or something like that. And then making sure that the packages are controlled with versions. So that's kind of the main thing that we cover. We don't cover too much any sort of security or anything like that. Okay, Paolo asks, Matt, you mentioned prefect for data automation, but I don't see it in your Python for data science automation. Correct, because prefect is pretty advanced. So to teach that in a 101 course would be a bit much. So I plan on teaching that down the road, and definitely maybe in more of an advanced course or in a Learning Lab Pro. Richard, I don't understand the cloud preference for Python. If you use Docker, for instance, with Azure Kubernetes or an Azure container, why would there be a preference for Python? So when I say that there's a preference, I'm saying that the tools tend to be a little bit more built out. And for example, Bodo 3, if you go to that, so Bodo 3, it has more capabilities for interacting with your Amazon Web Services than usually the package in R. So R has some AWS capabilities, but it doesn't have the extent that you can do with Bodo 3. And there's tons and tons and tons of ways you can interact with all the different AWS things. So if you're talking about specifically just connecting with EC2 and putting a Docker image on EC2, yeah, that's no problem. You can definitely do that. But when I'm talking about like all of the different cloud things that you could possibly want to do, Bodo 3 has a lot of capability there, and R doesn't necessarily have an equivalent capability yet. Monica is just trying to understand why I consider Python better for machine learning. I think Python has more of a focus on machine learning. I don't know that it's necessarily 100% better. I think that both R is getting a lot better with tidy models in machine learning. And in fact, what I'm seeing is that tidy models is being adopted quite a bit. And I built Modeltime off it. So I clearly don't think R is weak in machine learning. I think that Python is building more automated tools and building more solutions that are low code and those sorts of things. So we're seeing that emerge more in the Python area. So it's definitely a spot that I want to focus on because there's so much development activity, and that's a philosophical thing. If you look at my course curriculum, I also focus on for data science for machine learning. So we've got time series. Time series is a huge strength. I built Modeltime for that reason. It's the dominant. It's the best system out there for forecasting. That's only available in R. Machine learning has H2O, Lime. It also has over here. I guess I can't see it. It's tidy models. I teach these for a reason in the 5-course R track. They're amazing programs and they're amazing software. But also, Python has its own capabilities, and I'm excited to showcase those as well. So don't think of it like R sucks. Think of it like both are getting much better there. But Python, I want to create a machine learning course because it's a strength. Okay. Matt, I didn't see scikit-learning or machine learning for business. It is there. It is there. So if I go back here, next course, sklearn ML, sklearn pipeline. So it's definitely in there, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on, especially because of the Dask integration and some of the things, like pretty much all of the packages have sklearn kind of like modifiers. So we're going to be teaching feature engineering and machine learning in that course, probably focusing on some NLP as well. And it'll be really exciting. And we'll get a chance to see Dask in action along with scikit-learn. So it's definitely in there, Paulo. Okay, where was I? Oh, whoops. Muhammad asks, is there a monthly subscription model that gives access to all courses? Not currently, there isn't. So you either buy the 5-course art track or you'll buy the Python course, but there's nothing like a monthly subscription model that we have available currently. Jamie asks, hi Matt, for DS4B 101P, I understood that we will be learning all the data wrangling stage in pure Python. That's correct. Yes, you have 5 hours just on pandas. And then there's also another section on time series, another section on the visualization piece. So you're going to be totally set with data wrangling in Python. Dear Raj asks, are the courses subscription based on one-time buy? Yes, there's also payment plans as well. So, you can spread the payments out over time or make a single purchase. Matthew asks, any plans for Modeltime functionality in Python? So I eventually want to take a look at that. It's just going to take some time. We're still building Modeltime in R, so I want to finish that build out first, and then look at TimeTK actually, which is the more important package because that's Modeltime rests on TimeTK. All of the functionality from a lot of the functionality from Modeltime comes from TimeTK, so we need that built in Python first. Christian asks, I've devoted a lot of time learning R. What can Python offer me that makes it a must-have skill? In other words, what can Python offer me that R doesn't? Well, there's a lot of things. I mean, R, if you're already getting everything out of R that you feel you need, then you probably shouldn't learn Python. But if you are seeing areas like where you may want to utilize some of the technologies from Python that aren't available in R, then you're going to have to make a choice. I think, for me, it made sense to learn more Python, and I'm glad I did it because I think when it comes to building and merging software tool chains together and working on teams that collaborate, it can be really important skill to be able to speak both languages, R and Python fluently, and be able to build software in both and be able to integrate software coming from a team member and doing those sorts of things. So if you're just specifically working solo on certain projects and you never need to use a Python package, then you probably don't. But if you're working on teams and if you want to advance your skill sets for some of these things that a lot of these industries are going towards, which is multilingual teams, then you'll definitely want to learn Python, at least a little bit of Python in addition to R. Dear Raj asks, how do you stay up to date with business and data science? Ooh, that's a good question. I have a lot of business knowledge and background as already. I have my MBA. I've worked in business and consulted for 13, 15 years or so. So I feel like with the business stuff, I've learned a lot. The data science is a lot more challenging, and applying the new concepts to businesses is probably the toughest part. And I read a lot and I try to stay up to date on what new software is coming out. Jamie asks, hi Matt, are you offering price discounts if we bundle some of these together? So eventually there will be some pricing discounts for bundled tracks. But if you purchase now, we do what's called an upgrade. And that's when you take advantage of, say, buy this course, say you want it right now, and then you want to, when the next course is released, if there's a bundle associated with it, we can upgrade you into it. So my wife handles all of that. She's really good. She's a whiz with upgrades, and basically, yeah, that's how we keep you learning, and we want you in more courses, and we want you to keep helping you accelerate your career. So we'll help you out, of course. P. Fry asks, really appreciate the session. I like the IDE comparison / recommendations. Thanks, P. Vricha asks, for prediction on multivariables, what kind of regression models are used? I think it's a little bit outside of the scope of this conversation, so we'll handle that through some more content, learning labs and such. Anonymous asks, is there a time frame we need to finish the program? No time frame. When you buy, you own for life, so you get lifetime access to the courses. Okay, Risha says, thank you. You're welcome. Gutham asks, is that PyCaret equal to cart R package? So PyCaret, it's actually, I think it got the name from the Caret package, which is one of the original machine learning packages in R. But PyCaret is actually a low-code machine learning suite of tools. So it leverages scikit-learn internally, and also XGBoost, CapBoost, and several other packages. And it just makes it's kind of a framework that rests on top of all that stuff and kind of handles the heavy lifting internally. So it makes it a low-code way to do machine learning. How different is PyCaret from scikit-learn? Well, PyCaret actually uses scikit-learn. So let's see, do I have a course in Learning Lab on writing efficient code, writing R as a package? I do have an R as a package. I have a whole series in Learning Labs Pro. Python as an application. So Python is, I would say the 101 course is going to really help you develop reproducible and production ready code because you're building your own modules and your own Python package in that. And it shows you how to develop an environment and those sorts of things. Louis asks, do you have a specific course for our time series and reports automation? So yes, I do. I have the high performance forecasting course. It's my DS4B 203 course. And what it does is it teaches you how to use my Modeltime software. So I spent over a year developing the software. There's now it's a whole ecosystem now. And it's really good for forecasting, high performance. It integrates all of the latest competitions like the M5, the M4, several of the Kaggle competitions. And it takes basically what those winning strategies are and it builds those into a framework. So you only have to write, a little bit of code versus a lot of code in order to be able to implement the techniques in your company. It works on many, many thousands of time series. I have students using it 5,000, 10,000 time series or more. And it seems to be working pretty well for them. Peter asks, can Python VS Code integrate with a Zotero reference manager as R Markdown can? I don't know about that one. I'm going to have to take a pass on that question. William Henry asks, what was your biggest learning curve as you began to dig into Python? Good question. So Pandas was my biggest learning curve. Honestly, it's just such a big library, and there's so much to it. So, learning Pandas, kind of working with the nuances, learning the difference between like a period and a time delta, and date time 64 and those sorts of things. It just takes time and repetitions. So I feel like having an R background actually really helped me because I knew the Lubridate package pretty well, and it was very similar. Some of the time series stuff and Pandas was similar, but it has like things like resampling, and I just had to kind of wrap my head around that. But yeah, probably Pandas was the biggest so far. Michael asks, what is the size of the Python community who can be recognized as expert? I have no clue, honestly. The Python community seems very fragmented, whereas R seems very like kind of it's easy to see who the experts are. So just if you follow the RStats hashtag, you can figure that out pretty quickly with R. But with Python, I just don't know that there's like a hashtag on Twitter or anything. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. So Giuseppe asks, did you ever look at Altair for statistical visualization? Yes, yeah, because I think Streamlit actually uses Altair, so I checked it out. It's very good. It took me a little time to get accustomed to it, but it definitely has a nice grammar to it for building visualizations, and I found working with it pretty enjoyable. Elad asks, can VS Code connect to pre-installed Conda environment, or I need to reinstall all packages, yes, it integrates with Conda. So I use Conda for everything. And it just, as long as you have your Conda environments on your machine already, when you install VS Code with the Python extension pack and out of the marketplace, it'll recognize all of those libraries and make them searchable, all those environments, I should say. Amit asked, do any of the courses go through the process of deploying a model into production and feeding it data over time while the model continues to provide new predictions as it gets new data? So we do have the Shiny course, which shows how to deploy on AWS using Shiny. It does ingest new data, the data that source that it accesses from Yahoo Finance. So that's technically new data. And as Yahoo Finance updates every day, it ingests new data on demand. So yes, we do have that. It's the Shiny 202A course. Is the R-Pause package similar to Bado 3? I'll have to take a look at Pause, R-Pause. Okay. So this is the SDK for R. I haven't actually used this yet, but it does look like it's similar. Just double check, make sure. You'll have to do a comparison and make sure it has all of the tools and functionality that you need. It's just Bado 3 is pretty massive. Okay. How long do you expect the course to take to complete, spending 2 to 3 hours per week? Well, I recommend 5 to 10 hours per week. First off, Paulo, I think that 5 to 10's probably going to be enough to help you complete it within maybe 6 to 8 weeks. The challenge is that if you're only doing 2 to 3 hours per week, to be able to get through all the content, it's probably going to take you a little bit longer. Richard asks, another suggestion to address Shiny proxy. Yes, I've gotten that quite a bit. And that's like the Docker solution to Shiny to make it easier for enterprise. I haven't used it, but trust me, I've received a lot of requests for it, and maybe down the road we'll put a course together on it. Can you plug VS Code into an Azure environment? I believe you can. I think you can run Azure. You can run VS Code off of a server, like an Azure server. Yep. Lewis, prerequisite for the 203 high performance course. It's the 101R course. So that's the basics. That'll teach you like tidyverse, tidy models, and get you some exposure to doing some forecasting, or get you exposure to doing modeling first. I think that's a good first step before you go to the 203. You can always try the 203, and if it's too much, you can go backwards. The 203 course is very focused on time series. It's my longest course. It has about 40 hours of content, and it will teach you in-depth time series, but it expects that you have the basics. It doesn't teach you how to do data wrangling with R. It doesn't teach you how to do, it kind of jumps right into tidy models too. Okay, so that's it for questions. I think that's a wrap here. We've gone about 30 plus minutes on questions. I definitely want to have you guys take advantage of those the 20% off discounts. I'm going to put those in the chat one more time, and feel free to reach out to me either on social media, in Slack if you're a student, through email, if you have any questions on any of the course or any of the material that I covered today. All right, everyone. I appreciate it as always, and thank you for attending. I'll see you guys next time. We'll see you. Bye-bye.